ala prima technique that involves painting in the layers of transparent first and then opaque second. If it's a small canvas, I'll fill up the whole canvas with all the transparent colors to begin with. If it's larger like this canvas, I'll do it in sections. Especially on black, you can lose where you are if you try to do too much at once. So here I am adding my first layer of opaques over the transparent so you can start to see the building taking form. And if you know the Buckhorn, you know that it's easy to spot in downtown Northport because of the huge rock out in front of it. They recently did lose their sign in a windstorm, but I decided to put it in the painting anyway. Helps identify where this spot is. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Beth Harrison. I'm here in my little bedroom studio, and I am going to show you around a little bit, and then I hope to do a demonstration of alla prima oil painting for you. Just a little background on me. I am not a college-trained artist. I have had great art experiences, especially growing up as a child. Art was my very favorite thing. Anybody who knew me would tell you that. And I can remember specific art projects I did in kindergarten. I can remember after-school programs that I joined when I didn't have to just because they were doing art programs. I had an excellent middle school experience where they did art in the afternoon. We got to choose different electives. I did leather work. I did drafting. We had even a course on drawing superheroes. And in high school, I had a fantastic art teacher. I took art all 4 years. Barbara Agario was her name. She became a really well-renowned pastelist after her time in teaching. And in college, I got really immersed in photography, and I loved working in the darkroom. After a couple of years, I found I was allergic to the chemicals in the darkroom, and I had a serious medical reaction to the chemicals, so I had to give that up, but I never did give up photography. And, after college, the joy that I felt in art kind of got lost in career, marriage, raising kids, and really concentrating on those things, which also brought me great joy. And I remember trying to work in little bits of creativity here and there in my photography and in my teaching. I was a biology teacher for a long time, and then I taught independent study for a long time. So if I could get kids to learn by having them draw bacteria and paramecium, that's what we would do. And we worked art into a lot of subjects. But all the while, I kept telling my husband how much I used to love art and that I wanted to get back to it someday. And I would say things like, when I retire, I'm going to be one of those ladies that takes those night classes or those day classes in adult school. And I'm going to learn how to paint again because I did a little bit of painting in high school and I liked it. So when I turned 50 and both my girls, one was in college, one was about to graduate from high school, my husband gifted me an entire setup for painting with acrylics. Everything I needed to get started, and said, why are you waiting for retirement? You don't need to. And I was like, okay, cool. So I set everything up in my dining room and just started experimenting, mostly using tutorials out of library books and then off of YouTube. I did that for about a year, and I had some results I was pretty happy with, but I felt like I wasn't getting better as fast as I wanted to. I could picture in my head what I wanted, and I wasn't getting there. So I searched for a teacher and found one in Clovis that taught in the evenings, because I was still teaching high school. Her name was Linda McCoy, and the COVID pandemic put her out of business, but I did take lessons with her for 5 years, and I learned so much about oil painting. She didn't do acrylics. I had to do oils. So I switched over to oils, and I've never looked back. I love oils so much. And a very critical moment for me was I was painting after my younger daughter had moved on to college. I turned her bedroom into a studio. I was painting one morning early on a Saturday. I could hear the birds outside. I had a little light music playing. And I was just so immersed in it, and I became aware of this kind of choking feeling that I was having. And I I I stopped for a second, like, what is happening to me? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just pure joy, just bubbling up in my throat. I was so, so happy to be doing what I was doing that I was just giddy. I was giggling. It was just all right there. And I knew that it was something I would be doing for the rest of my life. And so here I am, 10 years after my husband gifted me all of that. And uh, I have won some contests. I've entered a lot of shows. I have sold a lot of work. I have a website. I have work in Yosemite Gateway Art Center and Jenny's Garden in North Fork. Um, it's just, I've retired from teaching and now I can paint all that I want, and it's such a blessing, such a blessing. So I want to share a little bit of that with you today, and hopefully you'll get something from this that maybe you didn't know. I know a lot of you know more about painting than I do, but I'll show you what I do because people have asked me, and we'll go from there. All right. All right, so today I'm going to be using some brushes made by Winsor Newton. The series is called Monarch, and I like them. The bristles last a long time. I've had some of these brushes for years. They come in lots of sizes. They hold a lot of paint, and as long as you keep them clean, they will hold their shape for a long time too, and they come in rounds and flats and brights. So you can get them at Dick Blick, or Amazon carries some of them also. One of the things I do that's a little different from some painters I've seen is I divide my palette into transparent colors and opaque colors. And I've just set up a little example of that here for you to see, and I marked it with a Sharpie. So the transparent colors are all around the edge here. So I've got dioxazine purple, and I've got manganese blue hue, and I've got ultramarine deep, sap green, cad red, or no, not cad red. This is transparent red medium, and this one is quinacridone magenta, alizarin crimson, and this one is, what's that color called? It's a transparent yellow, Indian yellow they call that. And if you've never used Indian yellow, it's just, man, that's an amazingly bright yellow. And this is a transparent brown, and it's made by Rembrandt. So I don't really stick to one brand of paint. I have lots of gambling colors. I have lots of Rembrandt colors. I have some Lucas colors that I like. And sometimes I'll just buy whatever's available. Sometimes I'll buy whatever's on sale. I try not to buy student grade colors because I like to have a heavy pigment load. But if it's just white or something, you know, you're going to be putting lots of paint in. I mean, it doesn't always matter if the pigment load isn't that heavy. My opaque colors today, and I put out what I think I'll need. So I've got a cadmium yellow deep, a cad yellow medium, a yellow ochre, and a, what's this one? Cadmium red. And of course, white. And this is titanium white. And if you're not used to looking at whether your colors are transparent or not, you have to, they got some teeny tiny writing on the back of the tube. So I laid some out here. Like this one says transparent right there. This one just shows a square where that's not colored in. So that means transparent also. And if they show a square that is colored in, that means it's opaque. And of course, if the square is split in half, that is a semi-transparent color. And why does it matter? Well, you'll be seeing that as I paint, but I like to put down, and I learned this technique at a 3-day workshop I went to in 2014 with an artist named Dreama Toll Perry. You can look her up online. She's fantastic work and wonderful online courses. So I've done an in-person class with her, and I've done 3 online classes with her. And I don't paint the same subject matter she does, but I like to use her technique. And so I will be putting down all transparent colors first, and then coming over those with the opaque colors. So one of the things that I like to do, that I also learned from her, is I keep these little jars around. So anytime you have chance to grab a little jelly jar from a restaurant or something like that. And I fill these with half linseed oil and half Gamsol. And that's the medium that I'm going to be mixing in with my transparent colors. So when I start to paint, you'll see my transparent colors going on very, very wet. Once I'm done with the transparent layer, I don't use any medium at all. I go straight to my opaque colors, mix up what I need, and lay it right on top of the transparents. It keeps you really loose when your surface is really slippery, and that's kind of what this medium does, keeps your surface really slippery. I will be using a setup in my light box over here to work from. So I've just kept it really simple so that we can do everything we want to do in the time that we have. And that's just a light box that I bought on Amazon, and I put a little extra light on it too. And then over here on my easel, I have a canvas that I've divided into fourths, and I've already sketched out my little tomatoes 4 times. And you'll see that I have 4 different color backgrounds. One of the things people asked me to show was painting on black, because I do that quite often, and I love the drama that it creates. But sometimes I paint on white, and sometimes I paint more on, this is yellow ochre, but sometimes I use burnt sienna. Especially if I'm plein air painting and I want to get that little light glow. But I have been known to paint on dark blue. I've even painted on dark red. It just depends what you're going for, but some of the background color will peek through. So what I'm going to do for you today is paint all 4 of these using the same colors, the same opaque over transparent technique, and then you can decide if you would like to try different backgrounds. And hopefully this will come out pretty interesting. Okay, I'm ready to start painting. I've got my canvas divided into fourths. I have a different background on each one. I've got my palette ready, divided into opaque and transparent colors. And I'm going to start off with the red of the tomato. I'm using only my transparent reds. And I'm going to brush, you see how wet that is? That is, again, it's mixed with the 50-50 mixture of Gamsol and linseed oil. And I'm looking right here for where I have kind of my medium reds, not the darkest reds, not the lightest reds. And I am standing up. I almost always stand up to paint. I'm going to be really tired not to stand up. I really like the way it frees up my arm to move where I want it to go. I'm not being super careful about staying in the lines or putting this exactly where I want it. I'm getting close because I know that these transparent colors are going to get covered up by opaque colors. It doesn't mean they won't have their influence. They will. They'll definitely influence the colors I put on top. I'm going to mix a little bit of yellow, my Indian yellow, into this same pile of red that I've got going here for the top of the tomatoes, which are a little bit lighter. And again, the final color won't be as light as what you're seeing here, but I want to go pretty light up here to show where the light is. And let's see, any place else that light. Kind of the ridge that goes along the middle of these cut pieces is light. A little bit of lightness here. And some real light stuff there. I also keep a constant paper towel in my hand so that I can just wipe that color off my brush without constantly dipping into brush cleaner. And now I want a little bit darker red. I'm going to use my alizarin because the tomatoes get pretty dark here around the bottom. And this tomato has a lot of shadow on it. Shadows in here. can hear in my mind some of you saying, I wish I could see her tomatoes again. What is she painting from? All right, sorry for the little jump there. My camera and everything on it just like all fell on the floor. So I got it set up again, and here we go again. So I've got my very messy tomato drawings going here, and I am just kind of mapping out where the lightest colors are. When I go to do the shadows, I'm going to add a little bit of purple and blue to my red pile, and I'm going to put that under here where it's darker. And in here where the seeds are, I want a little bit of a dark background so the seeds will show up there. And of course, I'm going to need my sap green for the leaves up here. Now look how different this is going to look when I put it on the black. So here's my medium red. So you can see on black how very important it is to have a drawing down, because it's hard to see where you put your paint. I did the drawing on black with a pastel pencil, a white pastel pencil. That helps a lot, and the pastel doesn't seem to bother the paint in the end. It just kind of gets blended in. And I'm doing my lighter red on top. And I'm going to go pretty fast through this, not being real careful, because you've already seen me do all this. I just want you to see it on different colors. The real difference will come when I put the opaque colors on, and that's where I'll stop and be a little more careful with what I'm doing. All right, shadows. Greenery. If you're wondering about the palette of colors I'm using, I have experimented a lot, and I never have come up with one palette of colors that I like to use all the time. So like today I have 3 reds on my palette, and I also have 3 yellows. I don't always do that. but I knew I'd be needing reds and yellows here. And I do always put my transparent colors on the right and my opaques on the left, but I don't always put like the ultramarine blue in the same place all the time. I know a lot of artists do that and they say it helps them stay organized. But I've just never gotten into doing that, and it never seems to bother me. I watch a lot of artists on YouTube, and they always are saying, put out lots and lots of paint. You don't want to have to be precious with your paint and worry about not having enough. You don't want to stop what you're doing to put more out. But I don't know about you, but I was not raised with a lot of extra stuff, and I just don't waste. So I put out little bits of paint, what I think I'll need, and I don't like it when I have paint left over and I have to worry about it going to waste. I don't like to waste paint. It's not a cheap substance, and I don't feel like it hurts my paintings to have to stop and get more out. It doesn't bother me. I actually like something that forces me to take a little break while I'm painting. I think it's good to just step back and take a look at what you've done. And if getting out more paint forces you to do that, that's not such a bad thing. All right, shadows. I'm going to make the inside portion of these tomatoes just a little bit darker here. Well, maybe a lot darker. A little bit of shadow underneath the greenery. All right, hope you can see that. And when it comes to what colors do I put behind the tomatoes? White always looks really good behind bright colored things. Complementary colors tend to look good, but I think I'll do, I want to do a light blue. And I'll show you the difference, because this is one of the techniques that comes in really handy when you're doing a sky alla prima. So here's just very, very thin ultramarine blue. Very, very thin. And I'm just going to scribble it in back here. All right, and then here is some very thin manganese blue hue I'll put on this one. Can't really tell because it's black, but I will remember what I put there. And then if I want something to say I want to look like these tomatoes are sitting on a white table. I do have a transparent white. I don't use it too often, but white tends to have a little bit of blue in the shadows. So see, that's basically my medium, the 50-50 Gamsol linseed oil with just a bare touch of ultramarine. And I don't want to leave this area dry, because then my next coat won't go on very good. Okay, so again, I've got a very diluted ultramarine here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those two yet, so I'm going to leave them for now. So I'm rinsing off my brush. Now watch what happens to this background when I use the opaque white, titanium white. Got that on my brush, pretty thick. And I'm just going to lay it over the top here. You see how much blue shows through that? That is so fun when you're doing clouds or cloudy blue skies. And you can work it around a lot if you want to, or you can leave it pretty loose. And I put quite a bit of medium in there, so it's really slippery. Can you see how that brush is just slipping across there? Really slippery. I'm getting pretty close to the tomato, but I'm not really touching it. And then down here, I want this to look more like a blue table. So I'm going to use my titanium white, but now I'm going to put some ultramarine in with it. You could also use some cobalt blue if you want to stay with all opaques. But as long as there's some white in there, it will act as an opaque. So that's probably not dark enough. I want it to be dark enough to look different. Different from the area that's not. There we go. That's way different. Okay, and again, because I've got the medium down below, everything here is slipping and sliding. And where those shadows are, I need more of a purpley blue. Okay, so it still looks pretty much like a big old mess, right? But just hang in there, it'll get there. Okay, so I might as well put these shadows in while I got the shadow color on my brush. Somebody asked me recently why I hold my brush like this. It's just what I've always done. I have seen lots of videos with artists, and some hold it like this, some like this. So I don't think it really matters. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever gives you the kind of brush strokes you're looking for. All right, so during the opaque layer, I do have to rinse my brush off quite a bit because that opaque paint is not going to just come off on its own. Remember, I'm not adding any medium to this layer. Let's see what we got for tomato red. This is Cadmium Red Light. It's a pretty good tomato red. Yeah, it goes on there pretty good. Let's put that on as our base color. I don't often use colors right out of the tube, but this one does seem to be about what I want. And I'll be mixing yellow into this to make my lighter red. And I'll probably put a little blue in it to make my darker reds. All right, so I've lightened it up a little bit for the top of the tomato. Can you see that? See that little shadow I put down there? As soon as I touch it with this more orangey color, that shadow kind of mixes right into it, if I don't have to do much with it, which is nice. And again, that is Cadmium Red Light and Cadmium Yellow Medium. Look at how that just glows on the black canvas. Try not to stand in front of you too much. Because it is a black canvas, I kind of have to turn to the side a little bit to see where my lines were and where I put colors in. There's a little bit of reflected light down here. I'm kind of jumping all over here. I don't know. I tend to, some people, you know, finish one thing at a time, but I tend to jump around. This part of the tomato right here tends to be a little pinker than the rest of the tomato. So I'm going to put a little pink in there. There's a little pink over here. If you're ever looking for something to practice painting with, simple subjects. Tomatoes, limes, orange slices, some of my favorites. And if I'm not quite sure how something's coming out, I might do it a little different. I might do one tomato a little different, just to see. Not too long ago, I did a Facebook post kind of like this, where I painted, I put it on time lapse, and I painted some pea pods, one on black and one on white, and both at the same time and both on time lapse, and then asked people which they liked better. In my mind, the black one was so much better, so much more enjoyable to look at, but I got quite a few people who liked the white one better. So, you know, definitely art in the eye of the beholder. All right, putting out some more red. Because I did run out. Let's get some on this blue canvas. And then some of the lighter orangey red up at the top. And you can see how the transparents underneath kind of change the colors I put it on there. They come into it. But I'm pressing very, very lightly, if at all. So I'm really kind of using that side of the brush and just going parallel with the canvas. So if I wanted them to come into it more, I would press a little harder. It takes a little practice to do this. If you put on too much oil at the beginning, your paint, you might find that your paint is too slippery, that it won't stay where you want it to stay. So be patient with yourself. Try it a few times. If you decide to look up Dream Atoll Perry online, she teaches you how to do this step by step also. I learned so much from her. I'm mixing up a little bit darker red now, adding alizarin crimson to my cadmium red light. And I just want to put in some of these dark spots that I see on this tomato. And you see that dark blue I put in there when I put some red on top of it? And I get that real deep color that's inside a tomato, and I'll put the little yellow seeds on top of that later. It is weird for me to be painting the same thing four times at once, so I keep kind of forgetting what I'm doing here. This technique works really well on small paintings. If you want to do a much bigger painting and use this technique, it helps if you just do one section at a time, because you don't want your transparent layer to get dry or sticky while you're finishing up the rest of the painting. It needs to stay wet and slippery. And just getting some of those darks in there. I'm going to mix up some opaque green here. I'm using cad yellow and sap green. And I have switched to a Monarch round size 6. And this is because I want to get some green into these little spots here. The opaque paint wants to stay on top of the transparent. Especially if you keep it thick. On these little cut tomatoes, I do have a little bit of green right where the stem used to be. the sap green is a transparent color, but as soon as I mix it with the cad yellow, it's opaque. Kind of lost my lines where these little leaves went, but I don't think it really matters if they're all different or they go in a weird direction. Okay. Rinsing off some brushes. Got some white on here. You remember what I put underneath here? I think it was cerulean. Yeah. Much lighter than ultramarine. But you can see it's starting to peek into the white. Great for making clouds. I'm going to be kind of careful here. I don't want to get that green in my background. So I'll go up close to it. Try not to touch it because once these layers dry, and they will dry pretty quickly, like by tomorrow, because there's Gamsol in there, then I can go in with a tiny brush and make all my final marks. I don't remember what I put there. But I think it was just a real pale blue. So this is white mixed with ultramarine, paler than I did on the canvas to the left, but lighter than the shadows, so that's good. This is what I like about the black. I like that the black peeks through here and there and gives you kind of an outline. If you remember, Van Gogh liked to put black outlines in a lot of his things. And if I lose my black outline and I want to, I can go in with black paint and put it in, but I don't usually have to do that. I like that blue. I'll make this one a little lighter also. Helps the shadows show up better. Yeah. Colors aren't too close to each other. All right, I think on this one I want to try a complementary color. Let's put a greenish background below those tomatoes. So now I'm back to my transparent and I'm doing sap green. All right, and this is going over the top of it, sap green mixed with white. So now I've got my opaque. And of course, green and red are complementary colors that make each other pop. I will need to adjust my shadows on here to make them look more like they're on a green surface. That is not hard to do. I like that green. Now I wish I'd used green on all of them. All right, let me make a bluish green for the shadows. So I'm just using that same pile of white and green paint, but I've added some blue and a little bit of purple to it to adjust these shadows a little bit. Might as well do these two. I'm going through a lot of paper towels because I do wipe my brush between each color. All right, I'll do this one also, green in the background. This is a little bit different green. I mixed some of the Indian yellow in with it. So this will not get completely finished during the demo, but it will be far enough that you can kind of see the potential of it. Alla prima does mean like all at once, getting it done all at once. And I know some artists would completely finish it all at once, which is great. I do like to go back the next day though and do little touch-ups, but that's me. All right, opaque green with a little bit of yellow in it. See which one you like better. I don't press too hard. I don't know if you can see that very well in the video, but it's kind of nice to leave some of those strokes showing. You can definitely see them in person. All right, so let's try a yellow background here. This is kind of an orangey yellow because I used the Indian yellow with just a little bit of the brown in it. Got pretty wet there, so I'll wipe off some of that oil. All right, see how the yellow going on a blue canvas definitely looks more green than it did next door. That's okay, we want something different. All right, so now I'm going to mix white and Indian yellow to make a really bright yellow. at that Indian yellow and white. Just the color of sunshine. Oh, is it pretty when you brush it on? Indian yellow is definitely a dramatic color. I just realized I'm painting on top of my piece of tape that separates these, so I think this tomato's going to have its top cut off a little bit, but oh well. Well, I like that background a lot. Adjust these shadows, they don't seem right. All right, so I like to take care of the edges when I see that, especially shadows should not have too sharp of edges. So I'm just brushing very, very softly over them. This is just dry brushing very softly, looking for places that I want to soften up. Let's see, I can see that I never finished a lot of parts of, I think I did parts of tomatoes on some and not on the others. This is my super dark red. And I've left off some of the highlights too. Let's make, so this tomato's got kind of a shiny spot right there. A yellowy orange right there. I'll let you see really quick how my palette is just a mess right now. That's okay. I usually use a much bigger palette. I just put it on a small palette so it fit on the camera better. I really don't like using a small palette. Even when I go plein air painting, I try to pick the biggest thing I can carry. I like room to mix. Looking now at my real tomatoes for places where I see light, where I see color shifts. And kind of see that my goal so far has been to get the base colors down where I want them, and now I can come through and look for smaller shifts. All right, phone fell again because I keep stepping back, which I'm used to doing when I paint. But when I step back now, I hit the tripod. So sorry about that. But I needed to step back and take a look, like, what else do I need to do here? I know I need to put those little yellow seeds in there, which are a pretty light yellow. I still have my Indian yellow white mix. I'm just going to add a little bit of cadmium yellow to it. And I just want to kind of touch where these seeds would be. I am conscious of trying to keep my brush clean, because as soon as I touch this, of course, it's going to pick up the color underneath, so I'm touching it really lightly. And then I'm wiping it off on my paper towel every couple of strokes. I'm looking at my real tomatoes to make sure I see how the little seeds lay out. I'm keeping this yellow really opaque because I want it to lay on top. So again, it's Opaque Colors. It's not diluted with anything. So it's just opaque paint, thick on the brush, and tapped on there pretty lightly. And you don't have to put in every seed, you're just trying to give an indication where they are. While it's still wet, I want to show you one of the cool things about doing an alla prima painting. I've got this little tool. It's called a Kemper tool. It's sometimes also called a wipeout tool, but it's got a rubbery end. One end is just a point, the other end is more of a bevel. So if I make a mistake and I don't like this color here, I can just scrape it out. But I also like it because, I don't know about you, but I always have trouble signing my name on a painting. So with this, I can just scrape the paint away. And you probably can't see that too well in there. Let's see. Yeah, we can see it better on white. But it does make it pretty easy to sign your work, as long as you don't forget, let it dry. Just saw that I forgot to put seeds in this one. Oops. All right, so what will I be doing to this after it dries? I'll be looking for maybe some of the highlights that I haven't been able to put in yet because the paint's too wet. So like, here's a super light green that can highlight, where the light's hitting the greenery of the tomato. So I might put a little stripe there, there. These leaves should be lighter towards the light. Probably be a little light down in here. all of that will show up a lot better tomorrow. It doesn't have to get completely dry. It just needs to get tacky. And then the opaque colors will show up even better. But this is the alla prima technique, meaning it's not maybe 100% finished, but it is pretty darn close. And you know, in a very short amount of time compared to lots of styles of painting, you definitely get your boundaries in. And I can look at this tomorrow and decide what else I want to do to it. Let me get you a little closer. So that was the one on black. That was the one on white. The one on yellow. And there's the one on blue. I'm getting pretty close so you can see some of the brush strokes a little better. All right. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be waiting for your questions. Okay, it's the next day, and I have peeled the tape off of this to divide the 4 quadrants. And I just softened a few edges. I darkened the shadows a bit where they needed it. And I can't say that I'm super happy with the way this came out, but I think it did demonstrate what I was trying to show. And I do like the one on black best. That was this one. But other people are gonna have their favorite. I did want to show you one of the paintings I've done where I started with a deep blue tone on the canvas. This one's called The Road to Moab. And if I get close enough, maybe you can you see a little bit of blue peeking through here and there? Blue worked so perfect for this one because I knew that there was going to be so much orange in it. And blue and orange look fabulous together. And I wanted to show you this one that I started by toning bright, bright red. So can you see the red peeking through? It really gave it that feeling of hot sun. And the story in this one was all about the red tennis shoes. So red was the perfect beginning spot for this one. So my palette is a mess. My workspace is a mess. And that's good. That's the way it should be. And I hope that you will give this technique a try. Bye.